Clara Whitmore disappeared at a dinner table surrounded by 50 people, and no one noticed. Not when her chair was quietly removed. Not when a duke took her place. Not when she stood in the hallway, alone, realizing she had spent 26 years teaching herself how to vanish. But someone did notice, and that single moment of being seen by the one man everyone feared would unravel everything she thought she knew about survival, belonging, and the difference between filling a space and claiming one. This is the story of a woman who learned that the most dangerous thing she could do wasn't fight back. It was refuse to disappear. If you want to see how far Clara's story reaches, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to know where this journey takes us. Clara had learned early and without ceremony that there were two kinds of people in the world, those who entered rooms and those who completed them. She was the latter. She'd known it at 12, when her mother died and her father remarried within the year. A woman with a daughter already grown, already polished, already everything Clara wasn't. She'd known it at 16 when invitations came addressed to the Whitmore family, and her stepmother would smile and say, "Oh, Clara dear, you don't have to come if you'd rather not," as if it were kindness. As if Clara had a choice. She'd known it at 22, standing as a bridesmaid in her stepsister Rosalind's wedding, wearing a dress 2 shades darker than everyone else's because the seamstress had run out of fabric. She'd known it every time a chair was pulled out for Rosalind and she was left standing. Every time a man's gaze slid past her to land on someone shinier, someone easier to see. By 26, Clara had perfected the art of it, of smallness, of silence, of arriving early and leaving late, of laughing at jokes she didn't find funny, of agreeing with opinions she didn't hold. She had survived by becoming a woman no one had to think about, and tonight would be no different. The invitation had come 3 days ago, delivered by a courier in Whitmore livery. Her stepmother, Vivian, had opened it at breakfast, her eyes scanning the heavy cardstock with the kind of casual ownership that came from never being denied anything. "Lady Pembroke's autumn dinner," Vivian announced, setting the card beside her tea. "How lovely. Rosalind, you'll wear the emerald silk." Rosalind, golden and glowing even at 9 in the morning, nodded without looking up from her correspondence. "The one with the lace trim?" "Naturally." Clara kept her eyes on her plate. "Toast, butter, jam, small bites. Don't draw attention." "And Clara," Vivian added, almost as an afterthought, "you're invited as well." Clara's hand paused halfway to her mouth. Rosalind glanced up, one perfect brow arched. "Is she?" Vivian waved a hand. "They needed an even number. Lord Pembroke's nephew is attending, and they're short a dinner partner. You know how Patricia is about her seating charts." "Ah." Rosalind returned to her letters, the matter already forgotten. Clara set down her toast. "I see." "Don't look so sullen, dear," Vivian said, her voice sugared with false warmth. "It's a compliment. They thought of you." No, they didn't, Clara thought. They thought of a number. I just happened to fit. But she smiled. She always smiled. "Of course. Thank you." Now, standing in front of the mirror in her small bedroom, tucked in the east wing away from the main family suites, Clara studied her reflection with the detached assessment of someone examining a piece of furniture. Acceptable. That was the word. Not beautiful, not striking. Acceptable. Her dress was a pale gray silk, high-necked and long-sleeved, modest to the point of severity. Her dark hair was pulled into a simple twist, no ornaments, no pins that might catch the light. Her face was clean, her expression neutral. She looked like what she was, a placeholder, a body to fill a seat. "Clara!" Vivian's voice echoed up the stairs. "The carriage is waiting." She took one last look at herself, then turned away. The Pembroke estate sat on the edge of Ashford County, a sprawling manor house surrounded by manicured gardens and ancient oaks. Lanterns lit the long drive, their glow warm against the October chill. As the Whitmore carriage rolled to a stop, Clara could already hear the hum of conversation drifting from the open doors. Laughter, music, the clink of crystal. Rosalind descended first, a vision in emerald and gold, her entrance perfectly timed to catch the light. Men turned, women whispered. Vivian followed, resplendent in burgundy, her chin high. Clara came last. No one turned. Inside, the entrance hall was ablaze with candles, the walls lined with portraits of Pembroke's past, their painted eyes stern and watchful. A servant took Clara's cloak without looking at her face. Another directed the family toward the drawing room, where pre-dinner drinks were being served. "Vivian, darling," Lady Pembroke swept forward, all silk and pearls and practiced delight. She kissed Vivian's cheeks, clasped Rosalind's hands. "And Clara," she added, her gaze landing on Clara for a fraction of a second. "How nice?" "Thank you for having me, Lady Pembroke." Of course, of course." Patricia Pembroke was already turning away. "Now, Rosalind, you simply must meet Lord Ashford's son. He's just returned from the continent, and I'm certain you'll find him fascinating." Rosalind allowed herself to be led away, Vivian close behind. Clara stood alone in the center of the hall, holding a glass of champagne she didn't want, watching the crowd swirl around her like water around a stone. She'd been here 5 minutes, and already she was invisible. Dinner was announced at 8. The dining room was a masterpiece of excess. A table long enough to seat 50, set with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter under the weight of a glance. Crystal goblets caught the candlelight and threw it back in fractured rainbows. The air smelled of roasted meat and expensive perfume. Clara found her name card at the very end of the table, tucked between an elderly magistrate who was already half asleep and a younger man she didn't recognize. Not at the head, not near the hostess, not anywhere that mattered. She sat. The magistrate didn't acknowledge her. The young man gave her a brief, polite nod, then turned to the woman on his other side and didn't look back. Clara unfolded her napkin and placed it in her lap. She'd done this 100 times. She knew the steps. Smile when spoken to, nod at appropriate intervals. Eat slowly. Don't finish first. Don't call attention. Survive. The first course arrived, a delicate consommé, clear as glass. Clara lifted her spoon. Around her, conversation rose and fell in waves. Politics, gossip, the weather, someone's daughter's engagement, someone else's son's scandal. No one spoke to her. She was halfway through the soup when the room changed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but Clara had spent her life reading the subtleties of social spaces, the slight shifts in temperature that signaled danger or opportunity. She felt it now, a sudden tension, a collective intake of breath. The double doors at the far end of the dining room opened. A man entered, tall, dark-haired, dressed in black from collar to cuff, severe and sharp as a blade. He moved like someone who had never questioned his right to be anywhere, his presence filling the room in a way that had nothing to do with size and everything to do with power. The Duke of Ravencrest. Clara had never seen him in person, but she knew the name. Everyone did. Nathaniel Cross, Duke of Ravencrest, was a man spoken of in whispers and warnings. He was cold. He was ruthless. He didn't attend social events unless he had to, and when he did, he made it clear he'd rather be anywhere else. Rumors said he'd turned down 3 marriage proposals from some of the most eligible women in the country. Rumors said he'd ruined men with a single word. Rumors said a lot of things. Lady Pembroke rose from her seat, her smile tight. "Your Grace, we weren't expecting—" "I was invited," he said, his voice low and clipped. "I chose to accept." Of course. Please, we'll make room." "Don't trouble yourself." His gaze swept the table, cold and assessing. "I see you have a full house." "Nonsense." Patricia's laugh was brittle. "We always have room for you, Your Grace. Edmund, darling." She turned to a footman. "Bring another chair." The footman hesitated. "Where, my lady?" Patricia scanned the table. Her eyes landed on Clara. Clara's stomach dropped. "There," Patricia said, pointing. "Remove that seat and add one at the center. His Grace should be near Lord Ashford." The footman moved toward Clara without a word. Clara sat very still. Around her, no one objected. No one protested. The magistrate didn't stir. The young man didn't glance her way. Even Vivian, seated 15 places up, didn't turn her head. The footman reached for the back of Clara's chair. "Miss," he murmured, his voice apologetic but firm. "If you wouldn't mind." Clara's hands tightened on the edge of the table. For a moment, just one breathless, irrational moment, she wanted to refuse, to say no, to make them see her, acknowledge her, something. But she didn't. She never did. She rose, smoothed her skirt, stepped aside. The footman lifted her chair and carried it away as if it, and she, had never been there at all. Clara stood at the edge of the dining room, her hands clasped in front of her, her face carefully blank. The Duke of Ravencrest took his new seat without a glance in her direction. Conversation resumed. Laughter returned. She had disappeared, and no one noticed, except one person. Across the room, Nathaniel Cross turned his head. His gaze, pale gray, sharp as winter, found hers. He didn't look away. Clara's breath caught. For 3 heartbeats, 4, they stared at each other across the expanse of candlelight and crystal. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile, didn't frown, but something in his eyes shifted, a flicker of something she couldn't name. Then Lady Pembroke spoke to him, and he turned away. Clara exhaled. She slipped from the room before anyone could ask her to stay. The hallway outside the dining room was cold and dim, lit only by a single lamp at the far end. Clara pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes, willing her heartbeat to slow. It's fine. You're fine. This is nothing new. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like every moment of her life distilled into a single, unbearable clarity. She had been erased. Not violently, not cruelly, just practically, efficiently. The way one might remove a wilted flower from an arrangement. She heard footsteps and opened her eyes. A servant passed, carrying a tray of glasses. He didn't look at her. Clara pushed off the wall and walked. She didn't know where she was going. Away, somewhere, anywhere that wasn't here. Her shoes clicked softly on the marble floor as she wandered deeper into the manor, past drawing rooms and libraries and sitting areas she'd never be invited to use. She found herself in a small conservatory at the back of the house, all glass and iron and potted palms. The air was warmer here, humid and green. She sank onto a bench near the windows and stared out at the darkened gardens. You should leave, she thought. Go home. You're not wanted here. But home wasn't any better. Home was Vivian's tight smiles and Rosalind's indifference and her father's silence. Home was being told she was lucky to have a roof over her head, a dress on her back, food on her plate, as if gratitude could fill the hollow space where love should have been. She'd spent her whole life trying to earn her place, trying to be useful, trying to be enough, and it had never worked. I thought you might be here. Clara spun. The Duke of Ravencrest stood in the doorway. He was taller up close, his presence more intense without the buffer of distance. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd run a hand through it, and his eyes, those pale, unsettling eyes, were fixed on her with a focus that made her want to run. Your Grace, she managed, rising quickly. Forgive me, I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. He stepped into the conservatory, the door swinging shut behind him. You were invited. I was a convenience. The words were out before she could stop them. Clara froze, horror flooding her chest. Idiot. Fool. You don't say things like that. But Nathaniel didn't look offended. If anything, his expression softened, just barely, just enough to notice. Yes, he said quietly. You were. Clara blinked. What? You were invited to complete a table, not because anyone wanted you here. He tilted his head, studying her, and then you were removed the moment someone more important arrived. Am I wrong? She opened her mouth, closed it. No. And yet you stayed silent. What was I supposed to do? The question came out sharper than she intended. Make a scene? Demand they keep my seat? I'm not... She stopped herself. You're not what? Important. Valued. Worth the trouble. Nothing, Clara said. It doesn't matter. It does. Why? She turned to face him fully, anger sparking in her chest. Why does it matter to you? You don't know me. You've never even seen me before tonight. That's where you're wrong. Clara stared. What? Nathaniel took a step closer. I've seen you before. 3 months ago. At the Harringtons' garden party. You were standing near the fountain, alone, while everyone else danced. His voice was calm, matter of fact. You left early. She remembered. Of course she remembered. But she hadn't thought anyone else had noticed. And before that, he continued, at the Langley Ball last spring. You spent the entire evening in the card room, watching the game, but never playing. Clara's pulse quickened. You were watching me. I was noticing you. There's a difference. He paused. You're very good at disappearing, Miss Whitmore, but not invisible. Not to everyone. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the idea that someone, this someone, had seen her when no one else had. Why are you here? She asked finally. Why did you follow me? Because what happened tonight was wrong. It happens all the time. That doesn't make it right. Whoa, Clara laughed, a short, bitter sound. With respect, Your Grace, you don't understand. People like you don't what? Get overlooked? Dismissed? His jaw tightened. You think power makes you visible? It makes you a target. Every word I say is analyzed. Every decision I make is questioned. I'm watched, judged, expected to perform a role I never asked for. So don't assume I don't understand what it's like to be trapped." She stared at him, caught off guard by the rawness in his voice. "The difference," he said quietly, "is that I have the power to fight back. You don't. And that's what makes tonight unforgivable." Clara's throat tightened. "Why do you care?" He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Because I'm tired of watching people be erased," he said, "and because you deserve better than this." The words hit her like a blow. Not harsh, not cruel, just true. So painfully, impossibly true that she felt something crack inside her chest. "I should go," she whispered. "Where?" "Home. Back to what? To being invisible? To pretending this is enough?" "Don't." Nathaniel's voice was firm. "Don't go back to that table and let them pretend you were never there. Don't let them win. They've already won. They won years ago. Then fight back. I don't know how." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the way his jaw clenched like he was holding something back. "Start by refusing to disappear," he said. "Start by saying no." "To what?" "To all of it. To being convenient. To being forgotten. To accepting that you don't matter." His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. "You matter, Clara Whitmore. Whether they see it or not." Her name in his mouth was a shock. She hadn't told him her first name. He must have asked. Must have cared enough to find out. "I don't—" Her voice broke. "I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop vanishing." "And then what? What happens after that?" Nathaniel smiled, small and sad. "I don't know, but it has to be better than this." Clara looked away, her vision blurring. She'd spent so long teaching herself not to cry, not to feel, not to want. And now this man, this strange, impossible man, was standing in front of her and telling her she was allowed to. "I can't," she whispered. "Why not?" "Because if I stop disappearing," she swallowed hard, "if I stop making myself small and they still don't see me, if I fight and nothing changes, I don't think I'll survive it." The silence that followed was thick and fragile. Then Nathaniel spoke, his voice low and fierce. "Then don't fight alone." Clara's breath hitched. She turned back to him, searching his face for the joke, the pity, the inevitable dismissal. She found none of it. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you're willing to stop disappearing, I'll make sure they can't ignore you." His expression was deadly serious. "I'm saying that you don't have to do this by yourself." "Why would you do that?" "Because someone should have done it years ago." He paused. "And because I think you're stronger than you know." Clara shook her head. "You don't know me." "No, but I'd like to." The world tilted. This wasn't supposed to happen. Men like Nathaniel Cross didn't notice women like her, didn't seek them out, didn't offer them. What? Alliance? Friendship? Something more? "I don't understand," she said helplessly. "You don't have to. Not yet." He took a step back, giving her space. "But think about it. And when you're ready, when you decide you're done being erased, find me. And if I don't," his smile turned sad, "then I'll have been wrong about you. And I don't think I am." He turned to leave. "Wait." He stopped. Clara didn't know what she was going to say until the words were already out. "How do I find you?" Nathaniel looked back at her, and for the first time that night, something like hope flickered in his eyes. "You already have." He left her standing in the conservatory, alone but not quite the same as before. Clara sank back onto the bench, her hands shaking. What just happened? She didn't know, couldn't process it. All she knew was that for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her and seen more than a placeholder, more than a convenience. Someone had seen her. And the worst part, the most terrifying part, was that she wanted more of it. She wanted to be seen. Outside, the night was dark and cold, the garden silent. But inside the conservatory, surrounded by glass and green growing things, Clara Whitmore made a decision. She was tired of disappearing. She was tired of surviving. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to start fighting back. Even if she didn't know how. Even if it cost her everything. Because the alternative was spending the rest of her life as the woman no one sees. And she couldn't do that anymore. She wouldn't. Clara didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in the conservatory until the words lost meaning and became just sounds, just breath, just the memory of gray eyes that had looked at her like she mattered. You already have. What did that mean? What was she supposed to do with it? By the time dawn crept through her curtains, she still didn't have an answer, but she had something else, a knot of restless energy in her chest that felt dangerously close to hope. She rose, dressed in her plainest morning gown, brown wool, high collar, nothing remarkable, and went downstairs expecting the usual silence. Instead, she found Vivian and Rosalind already at breakfast, their heads bent together in animated conversation. Absolutely unheard of, Vivian was saying, her voice pitched with excitement. Patricia told me herself. He stayed less than an hour and barely spoke to anyone. Rosalind's eyes gleamed. Except he did speak to someone, didn't he? Clara stopped in the doorway. Vivian glanced up, her expression shifting from animated to calculating in an instant. Clara, good morning. Good morning. Clara moved to her usual seat, reaching for the teapot. We were just discussing last night's dinner, Vivian said, her tone casual in a way that set Clara's nerves on edge. Quite the event, wasn't it? I suppose. Rosalind set down her cup with a delicate clink. Don't be modest, Clara. You were the talk of the evening. Clara's hand stilled. What? The Duke of Ravencrest, Vivian said, leaning forward. Patricia said he left the dining room shortly after you did. And when he returned to retrieve his coat, he asked Lord Pembroke who you were. The tea in Clara's cup suddenly felt too hot. He did? He did. Rosalind's smile was sharp. Can you imagine? The Duke of Ravencrest asking about you. There was something venomous in the way she said you, as if the very idea were laughable. I'm sure it was nothing, Clara said quietly. A polite inquiry. Polite? Vivian laughed, the sound high and brittle. Darling, the Duke doesn't do polite. If he asked about you, it means something. Clara kept her eyes on her tea. Then perhaps you should ask him. Oh, I intend to. Vivian's voice took on a steely edge. In fact, I've already sent a note inviting him to tea this afternoon. I expect he'll accept. Clara's stomach dropped. You what? Well, naturally, if he has an interest in our family, we should encourage it. Vivian's gaze flicked to Rosalind, then back to Clara. These opportunities don't come often. He's not interested in the family, Clara said before she could stop herself. He's what? Rosalind's eyebrow arched. Interested in you specifically? How presumptuous. The word landed like a slap. Clara's cheeks burned. I didn't say that. Good, because it would be absurd. Rosalind rose, smoothing her skirts. The Duke of Ravencrest could have anyone, and I do mean anyone. The idea that he'd choose a girl who can't even hold a seat at dinner. Rosalind, Vivian said sharply. That's enough. But the damage was done. Clara felt the words settle into her bones, heavy and familiar. Of course it's absurd. What were you thinking? If you'll excuse me, Clara said, pushing back from the table, I have correspondence to attend to. She didn't, but she couldn't sit there another second. Clara, Vivian's voice stopped her at the door. The Duke's tea is at 3. You'll be present. It wasn't a question. Clara nodded without turning around and fled. She spent the morning in the library, a small room on the second floor that no one else used. The shelves were dusty, the books outdated, but it was hers in a way nothing else in the house was. She curled into the window seat, a book open in her lap that she wasn't reading, and tried to quiet the storm in her head. Don't let them win, Nathaniel had said. Start by refusing to disappear. Easy for him to say. He was a duke. He could refuse whatever he wanted and the world would bend around him. She was nobody. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Miss Clara? It was Margaret, one of the housemaids. Letter for you, miss. Clara took the envelope, frowning. She never received letters. Who's it from? Don't know, miss. Courier brought it not 10 minutes ago. Margaret left and Clara turned the envelope over in her hands. Heavy paper, no return address. Just her name, written in a strong, slanting hand. Her heart kicked. She broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the message brief. Miss Whitmore, I meant what I said last night. If you're ready, I'll be at the Ashford Gardens at noon. Come if you wish. Or don't. The choice is yours. N.C. Clara read it 3 times, her pulse racing. He'd written to her. Nathaniel Cross, Duke of Ravencrest, had written to her, and he was asking her to meet him. Alone. In public. It was reckless. It was improper. If anyone saw them, if Vivian found out, the choice is yours. Clara looked at the clock on the mantel. 10:30. She had 90 minutes to decide. She went. She told herself it was a mistake the entire way there, but her feet kept moving. Down the stairs, out the side door, across the grounds and into the lane that led to town. She walked quickly, head down, heart hammering. The Ashford Gardens were a public park on the edge of the city, a sprawling expanse of manicured lawns and winding paths. At noon on a Thursday, it was nearly empty, just a few nursemaids with their charges and an elderly couple feeding the ducks. Clara found Nathaniel near the fountain at the center of the park, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, staring into the water. He was dressed simply, dark trousers, a gray waistcoat, no coat, and he looked younger than he had the night before, less severe. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You came," he said. "I shouldn't have." "But you did." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "Why?" Clara stopped a few feet away, her hands twisting in her skirts. "I don't know." Yes, you do." She looked at him, this impossible man who had upended her entire world in the span of one conversation. "Why did you ask me to come here?" "Because I wanted to see if you would." He gestured to a bench nearby. "Will you sit?" She hesitated, then nodded. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the fountain filling the space between them. "I received a note from your stepmother this morning," Nathaniel said finally. "An invitation to tea." Clara closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Why are you apologizing?" "Because she's using me, using you. She thinks you're interested in Rosalind." "I'm not." The certainty in his voice made her look up. "She won't believe that." "She'll have to." He leaned back, his gaze steady on hers. "I'm not interested in playing games, Clara. If I wanted your stepsister, I would have spoken to her last night. I didn't. So what do you want?" "I want to know you." "Why?" "Because you're the first person I've met in years who doesn't want anything from me." Clara let out a startled laugh. "That's not true. I want—" She stopped. "You want what?" "To be seen, to matter, to stop feeling like I'm drowning in my own life." "I don't know," she said instead. Nathaniel studied her, his expression unreadable. "You're lying." "Maybe. Tell me the truth." "I barely know you." "Then let's fix that." He shifted to face her fully. "Ask me anything. I'll answer." Clara blinked. "Anything?" "Anything." She thought for a moment, then said, "Why did you come to the Pembroke dinner? You hate social events." "I do." "So why go?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Because I was invited by Lord Ashford, and refusing him would have caused political complications I didn't want to deal with. That's honest." "You asked for the truth." "Fair." Clara tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "My turn?" "Your turn. Why did you notice me? At the Harringtons' party, at the Langley ball. Why did you see me when no one else did?" He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Because you reminded me of someone." "Who?" "My mother." Clara's breath caught. "Your mother?" Nathaniel nodded slowly. "She was the daughter of a minor baron. No money, no connections. My father married her because she was beautiful and young, and he needed an heir. She spent her entire marriage trying to be enough, trying to earn his affection, his respect, his attention. She never did. And when she died, he remarried within 6 months." The pain in his voice was raw, unguarded. Clara felt it like a wound. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He looked at her, his eyes bright and fierce. "But I swore I would never let that happen to someone else if I could stop it. And when I saw you at those parties, standing alone, vanishing—" He stopped, his hands curling into fists. I couldn't look away. Claire didn't know what to say. The weight of his words pressed against her chest, heavy and real. "You didn't deserve what happened last night," he said, "and I couldn't let it pass without saying something. So you followed me." "Yes. And now you're asking me to, what, fight back? Against people who have spent years perfecting the art of making me feel small?" "Yes. That's insane." "Probably." He smiled, quick and sharp. "But it's better than the alternative." Clara shook her head, torn between laughter and tears. "You don't understand what you're asking. If I start pushing back, if I stop making myself convenient, they'll crush me. Not if you're not alone. You can't fight every battle for me. No, but I can stand beside you while you fight them yourself. The offer was too much, too big, too impossible. Why? Clara demanded. Why would you do that for someone you don't even know? Nathaniel leaned forward, his gaze locked on hers. Because I'm tired of watching people be erased, Clara. And because I think you're stronger than you believe. And because... He hesitated, then said quietly, because when I saw you last night, standing in that hallway, I didn't see someone broken. I saw someone who had survived. Her throat tightened. Surviving isn't the same as living. No, but it's a start. They sat in silence, the world around them fading until it was just the two of them and the impossible weight of what he was offering. Finally, Clara spoke. What happens if I say yes? Then we start. Start what? Making you visible. And if it doesn't work, then at least you'll know you tried. Clara looked down at her hands, at the worn fabric of her gloves, at the life she'd built out of silence and smallness. The choice is yours. I need time, she said. Nathaniel nodded. Take it. How much? As much as you need. He stood, offering her his hand. But don't take too long. The world won't wait for you to be ready. Clara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. His grip was warm, solid, real. Thank you, she said. For what? For seeing me. Something softened in his expression. You're worth seeing, Clara Whitmore. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. He left her standing by the fountain, her hand still tingling where he'd touched it. And for the first time in her life, Clara thought, maybe he's right. She made it home just before 2, slipping in through the side entrance and up the stairs before anyone could see her. Her heart was still racing, her mind spinning with everything Nathaniel had said. I can stand beside you while you fight them yourself. It was madness. It was impossible. It was the first real choice anyone had ever given her. She changed into a fresh dress, pale blue, simple but clean, and went downstairs to face whatever came next. The drawing room had been prepared for tea. Vivian sat on the settee, resplendent in lavender silk, her posture perfect. Rosalind perched beside her, golden and glowing, her dress cut just low enough to be daring without being scandalous. Clara took a seat in the corner, out of the way. There you are, Vivian said without looking at her. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten. No, I'm here. Good. When the Duke arrives, let Rosalind and I handle the conversation. You may pour the tea if asked. Clara's hands tightened in her lap. Of course. The clock struck 3. Vivian smoothed her skirts, her smile practiced and perfect. Rosalind tilted her head just so, catching the light. The door opened. The butler stepped in. Your Grace, the Duke of Ravencrest. Nathaniel entered, his expression neutral, his gaze sweeping the room. It landed on Vivian, then Rosalind, then, finally, Clara. Something flickered in his eyes. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, bowing slightly. Miss Whitmore. He nodded to Rosalind. And Miss Clara Whitmore. His gaze held hers for a beat longer than propriety allowed. Vivian's smile faltered just for a second. Your Grace, she said, recovering quickly. How kind of you to accept our invitation. Please, sit. Nathaniel took a chair across from the settee, not beside Rosalind, Clara noted, and folded his hands. Thank you for the invitation, he said, though I confess I was surprised to receive it. Surprised? Vivian's laugh was light, musical. Why ever would you be surprised? After last night's delightful dinner, I thought it only natural to extend our hospitality. I see. Nathaniel's tone was polite, but there was an edge beneath it. And here I thought the invitation might be connected to my inquiry about Miss Clara. The room went very still. Vivian's smile froze. Rosalind's eyes widened. Clara stopped breathing. Your inquiry? Vivian repeated carefully. Yes. I asked Lord Pembroke who she was. I assume he mentioned it. He did. Vivian's voice was strained, though I must admit I wasn't certain why I would be interested in Clara. Nathaniel's gaze was steady, unyielding. Because she's interesting. Rosalind let out a small, disbelieving laugh. Clara? Yes. The single word was a challenge. Vivian cleared her throat. Your Grace, I think there may be some confusion. Clara is a dear girl, of course, but she's not. Not what? Nathaniel's voice was dangerously quiet. Vivian faltered. Not accustomed to society. She prefers a quieter life. Is that true, Miss Whitmore? Everyone turned to look at Clara. Her mouth went dry. This was it. This was the moment. She could stay silent, agree with Vivian, sink back into the shadows where it was safe. Or she could speak, start by refusing to disappear. Clara lifted her chin. No, she said. That's not true. Vivian's expression went sharp. Clara, I don't prefer a quieter life, Clara continued, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her throat. I've simply never been given the option for anything else. The silence that followed was deafening. Rosalind stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Vivian's face had gone pale, then red. Nathaniel smiled. Well, he said softly. There it is. Clara, Vivian said, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. You're being rude to our guest. Am I? Clara looked at Nathaniel. Your Grace, have I offended you? Not in the slightest. His eyes gleamed with something that looked dangerously close to pride. In fact, I appreciate your honesty. Vivian stood abruptly. Perhaps we should reschedule this tea. Clara is clearly not herself today. I'm perfectly myself, Clara said, standing as well. For the first time in a long time. Sit down, Vivian hissed. No. The word rang out like a bell. Rosalind gasped. Vivian's face went white. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs, but she didn't sit, didn't apologize, didn't shrink. Nathaniel rose smoothly. Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for the tea, but I think it's best if I take my leave. Your Grace, please. Vivian reached for him, desperation creeping into her voice. However, Nathaniel continued, ignoring her, I would like to extend an invitation of my own. He turned to Clara. Miss Whitmore, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to the Ashford Museum's exhibition tomorrow afternoon? Clara's breath stopped. Vivian made a strangled sound. That's highly irregular. Is it? Nathaniel's tone was mild. I was under the impression that public outings were perfectly acceptable with proper chaperonage. I'll provide a carriage and a chaperone, of course. Vivian looked between them, her control slipping. Rosalind would be delighted to... I'm asking Clara. The room spun. Clara's hands were shaking. This was real. This was happening. Miss Whitmore? Nathaniel's gaze was patient, steady. Do you accept? Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to apologize, to make herself small again. But she was so tired of being small. Yes, Clara said. I accept. Vivian looked like she might faint. Rosalind's mouth hung open. Nathaniel bowed. Excellent. I'll send the carriage at 2. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mrs. Whitmore? I would appreciate it if Miss Clara were treated with the respect she deserves. She is, after all, a guest in your home as much as she is family. He left before Vivian could respond. The silence he left behind was nuclear. Clara stood frozen, waiting for the explosion. It came. How dare you, Vivian said, her voice shaking with rage. How dare you humiliate us like that? I didn't. You contradicted me in front of the Duke of Ravencrest. You made us look like fools. I told the truth. The truth? Vivian's laugh was sharp and ugly. The truth is that you are a charity case, Clara. We took you in when your father remarried. We gave you a home, food, clothing. And this is how you repay us? By throwing yourself at a duke? I didn't throw myself at anyone. Then what do you call that little display? I call it honesty. Vivian stepped forward, her face twisted with fury. You think he's interested in you? You think this is real? He's using you, you stupid girl. Men like him don't marry women like you. The words hit like fists, but Clara didn't flinch. Maybe not, she said quietly. But at least he sees me. Vivian's hand shot out and slapped her. The crack echoed through the room. Clara's cheek burned, her eyes stinging, but she didn't move, didn't cry. Get out, Vivian said, her voice cold. Get out of my sight. Clara turned and walked away, her head high, her hand steady. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked. And when she reached her room and closed the door behind her, she finally let herself shake. She'd done it. She'd fought back. And it had cost her everything. But as she pressed her hand to her burning cheek and thought of Nathaniel's words, "You're worth seeing," she realized something. It had also given her something she'd never had before. A choice. A chance. A way forward. And she wasn't going to waste it. She didn't sleep again that night, but this time it wasn't hope keeping her awake. It was fear. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, fully dressed, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. Footsteps in the hall. Voices downstairs, muffled but sharp. Vivian's anger hadn't cooled. If anything, it had hardened into something colder, more deliberate. Around midnight, Clara heard her father's study door open. Heavy footsteps. Then Vivian's voice, urgent and insistent. She pressed her ear to her bedroom door. "Out of control, Edmund. You need to put a stop to this before she ruins everything." Her father's response was too low to hear. "I don't care if she's your daughter," Vivian snapped. "She humiliated us. In front of the Duke of Ravencrest, no less. Do you have any idea what this could do to Rosalind's prospects?" A pause. Then her father's voice, weary. "What do you want me to do?" "Cancel it. Tell her she's not going tomorrow. Lock her in her room if you have to." "Vivian, or I will." Silence. Then footsteps. Moving toward the stairs. Clara's heart hammered. She stepped back from the door, her mind racing. They were coming. They were going to stop her. No. The word burned through her chest. No, not this time. She grabbed her cloak from the wardrobe, her hands shaking. She didn't have a plan, didn't know where she'd go. But she couldn't stay here. Not tonight. Not with Vivian's fury hanging over her like a blade. The footsteps stopped outside her door. A knock. Soft. Uncertain. "Clara?" Her father. She opened the door a crack. Edmund Whitmore stood in the dim hallway, his face drawn and tired. He looked older than she remembered, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. She stepped aside. He entered, closing the door behind him, and for a long moment they just stood there, father and daughter, strangers in the same house. The silence stretched between them, filled with years of things unsaid. "I'm not going to lock you in your room," he said finally. Clara's breath hitched. "You're not?" "No." He rubbed a hand over his face, the gesture so weary it made him look ancient. "Though Vivian would prefer I did." "I know. She's angry." "I noticed." Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. He almost smiled. Almost. "Clara, what are you doing?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I couldn't sit there and let them speak for me anymore. I couldn't pretend that being invisible was the same as being safe." "And the Duke? What about him? Is he using you to cause some kind of scandal? To embarrass someone? These aristocrats, they play games with people's lives." The question stung more than it should have. "No, I don't think so." "You don't think?" "I don't know him well enough to be sure," Clara said, her voice gaining strength. "But he's been kind. He sees me when no one else does. He makes me feel like I'm worth something." Her father's expression softened, pain flickering across his features. "Clara, men like Nathaniel Cross don't marry girls like you." There it was again, that phrase, "girls like you." "What does that mean?" Clara asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "What exactly am I like, father?" He flinched. "You know what I mean." "Do I? Because it sounds like you're saying I'm not good enough, that I'm worth less than Rosalind, less than Vivian, less than anyone who was born with the right name, or the right money, or the right face." "That's not—" He stopped, his jaw working. "You have no dowry, no connections. Your mother—" He caught himself. "My mother what?" Edmund looked away, staring at the worn carpet as if it held answers. "Your mother was a wonderful woman, but she came from nothing. A vicar's daughter, no fortune, no title. And when she died, she left you with nothing. I did what I could. I married Vivian to give you stability, a home." "You married Vivian because you were lonely," Clara said quietly. "And I became the inconvenience you had to manage, the reminder of what you'd lost." "That's not fair, isn't it?" She felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "When was the last time you asked me how I was? When was the last time you defended me when Vivian or Rosalind said something cruel? When was the last time you looked at me and saw your daughter instead of your dead wife's ghost?" He said nothing. The silence was answer enough. "I've spent my whole life trying to earn your love," Clara whispered. "Trying to be quiet enough, small enough, perfect enough that you'd notice me, that you'd choose me over them. And I finally realized I never will. Because you don't see me either. You stopped seeing me the day Mother died." The silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, Edmund spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I see you, Clara. I've always seen you. But I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to protect you from the world she left you in. Then let me help myself." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his face crumbled. "If you go with him tomorrow, if you continue down this path, Vivian will make your life here unbearable. It's already unbearable. It will get worse. I don't care. You should." He stepped closer, his voice urgent. "Clara, if this doesn't work, if the Duke loses interest or decides you're not worth the trouble, you'll have nothing. No home, no prospects, no future. Vivian will never take you back, neither will I. I don't have the strength to fight her. Then I'll have nothing, but at least it will be my choice. At least I'll know I tried to be something more than the woman no one sees." Edmund stared at her, and for the first time in years she saw something like pride in his eyes. Brief, fleeting, but there. "You're like your mother," he said softly. "Stubborn, brave, too brave for your own good. Is that why you stopped looking at me? Because I remind you of her?" His throat worked. "Yes." The admission broke something in her chest. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "For all of it. For not being stronger. For letting Vivian push you aside. For choosing my own comfort over your happiness. For being the kind of father who watches his daughter disappear and does nothing to stop it." He paused, his eyes glistening. "I'm sorry, Clara." She didn't know what to say. The apology felt both too much and too little, too late and desperately needed. "I'm still going tomorrow," she said. He nodded. "I know." He moved toward the door, then paused, his hand on the frame. "Be careful. The world isn't kind to women who step out of line." "I'm not stepping out of line. I'm drawing a new one." Edmund smiled, sad and small and heartbroken. "Then I hope you succeed. I hope you find everything your mother and I couldn't give you." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Clara sank onto her bed, her body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline, and something that felt dangerously like grief. She'd stood up to her father. She'd heard his apology. And somehow, it changed nothing and everything all at once. She'd done it. She'd claimed her choice. And tomorrow, she'd face the consequences. The carriage arrived at precisely 2:00. Clara stood in the entrance hall, dressed in her best day gown, a deep green wool that made her eyes look brighter, her skin less pale. She'd done her hair herself, twisting it into a simple knot at the nape of her neck, her fingers clumsy with nerves. No jewels, no adornments. Just herself. Vivian hadn't come downstairs. Neither had Rosalind, but Clara could feel their presence like a weight pressing down from above, watching, judging, waiting. Only her father appeared, standing in the doorway of his study, watching silently as Clara pulled on her gloves. "Clara?" She turned. He held out a small velvet box, worn at the edges. "This was your mother's." She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a delicate gold locket, simple and elegant, the chain fine as spider silk. "I should have given it to you years ago," he said. "On your 16th birthday, or your 21st, or—" His voice broke. "I kept it because I couldn't bear to look at it, but it belongs to you." Clara's fingers trembled as she lifted it from the box. Inside was a tiny portrait, a woman with dark hair and gentle eyes smiling at something beyond the frame. "She would have been proud of you," Edmund said quietly. "She would have told you to fight, to never let anyone make you small." Clara closed the locket and fastened it around her neck, the weight of it settling against her chest like a promise. "Thank you." The butler opened the door. Outside, a gleaming black carriage waited, the Ravencrest crest emblazoned on the side in silver and deep blue. A footman stood ready, his livery immaculate. Clara took a breath and stepped outside. The footman helped her into the carriage with practiced efficiency. Inside, an older woman sat primly in the corner, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, dressed in sensible gray wool with a white collar. "Miss Whitmore," the woman said with a nod. "I'm Mrs. Hendricks, the Duke's housekeeper. I'll be serving as chaperone today." "Thank you." Clara settled into the seat, her hands folded in her lap to hide their shaking. "His Grace speaks very highly of you," Mrs. Hendricks said, her tone warm but professional. "It's been a long time since I've seen him take an interest in anyone." Clara didn't know how to respond to that. "He's been very kind. He's been honest. There's a difference." The older woman smiled. "You'll do well to remember that about him. The Duke doesn't waste words on pleasantries." The carriage rolled forward, wheels crunching on gravel. Clara looked back once. Her father stood in the doorway, one hand raised in a gesture that might have been farewell or warning. She didn't wave back. She turned to face forward, toward whatever came next. Walked. The Ashford Museum was a grand stone building in the heart of the city, its columns rising like ancient sentinels. Nathaniel was waiting at the entrance, dressed in dark blue that made his eyes look like winter storms. His expression was unreadable until he saw her step down from the carriage. Then his face softened, something warm and relieved breaking through. "Miss Whitmore," he said, offering his hand to help her down. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would. I wasn't certain." His hand lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary. "How are you?" "Still standing." "That's all that matters." Mrs. Hendricks followed at a discreet distance as they entered the museum. Inside, the air was cool and hushed, filled with the smell of old wood and polished stone, and something that reminded Clara of churches, reverent and still. Paintings lined the walls, sculptures stood in silent vigil, and the light filtering through high windows painted everything in shades of gold. They walked in silence for a moment, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. "How are you?" Nathaniel asked finally, his voice low. "Truly." "Alive?" He glanced at her sharply. "What happened?" "Vivian slapped me. My father apologized. The house is a war zone." She said it lightly, but her hand drifted to the locket at her throat. "But I'm here. That counts for something." Nathaniel stopped walking. "She struck you?" "It's fine." "It's not fine." His voice was low, dangerous, the kind of voice that made people step back. "Did your father do anything to stop her?" "He gave me this." Clara touched the locket, the metal warm from her skin. "It was my mother's." Nathaniel's expression shifted, the anger giving way to something softer, more complicated. "May I see it?" She opened it, showing him the portrait inside. The tiny face smiled up at them, forever young, forever safe. "You look like her," he said quietly. "Everyone says that." "It's not an insult. She looks kind, brave." "She died when I was 12. I barely remember her voice anymore." Claire's throat tightened. Just pieces, the way she laughed, how she smelled like lavender, the songs she used to sing when I couldn't sleep. "I'm sorry." They resumed walking, passing through a gallery of landscapes, forests and mountains and seas painted in vivid color. Each one was a world unto itself, frozen in time. "My mother used to bring me here," Nathaniel said suddenly. "When I was young. Before she got sick. She loved this room." He gestured to a painting of a storm-tossed ocean, all dark waves and lightning and violence. She said it reminded her that beauty and violence could exist in the same space. That one didn't negate the other. Clara studied the painting. In the corner, barely visible, was a tiny ship fighting for survival against the waves. "Do you believe that?" she asked. "I didn't used to. Now I'm not sure." He looked at her. "You're beautiful when you're angry, you know." The words hit her like a shock. What?" "Yesterday, when you stood up to your stepmother, when you said no." His gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. "You were magnificent." Claire's cheeks burned. I was terrified. That's what made it magnificent. Bravery without fear is just recklessness. But choosing to fight even when you're terrified, that's courage. They moved into the next gallery, this one filled with portraits. Kings and queens and nobles all staring down from their gilded frames with expressions of power and certainty, as if they'd never doubted their place in the world. "Do you ever feel like a fraud?" Clara asked suddenly. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Like you're pretending to be something you're not. Like everyone expects you to be this perfect version of yourself, and you're just trying not to fall apart. Like any moment they'll realize you don't belong." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. Then, "Every day." She looked at him, surprised. "Really?" "I became Duke at 19, he said. My father died suddenly. Heart failure. One day he was there, lecturing me about responsibility and duty. The next he was gone, and I was standing in front of the House of Lords being told I was in charge of estates, finances, tenants, political alliances, things I knew nothing about. He stared at a portrait of a stern-faced man in military dress. I made mistakes. A lot of them. And every time I did, someone was there to remind me that my father would have done better, that I was a disappointment to the title. That's awful. That's responsibility. He turned to her. But I learned something. The people who demand perfection are usually the ones most afraid of being imperfect themselves. They tear others down because it makes them feel taller. Is that why you're helping me? Because you see yourself in me? No. I'm helping you because you deserve to be helped, and because I'm tired of watching people be crushed by systems that were never meant to serve them, and because— He paused, something shifting in his expression. Because when I look at you, I see someone who refuses to give up, even when she should, even when it would be easier. You sound like a revolutionary. He smiled, quick and sharp. Maybe I am. They continued through the museum, talking about art and politics and everything in between. Nathaniel spoke about his work in Parliament, fighting for labor reforms and education funding. Clara shared stories of the books she'd read in secret, the ideas she'd never been allowed to voice at dinner parties. Mrs. Hendricks trailed behind, a silent guardian, occasionally pausing to examine a painting. At some point, Clara realized she was smiling, actually smiling. Not the polite, practiced expression she wore at dinner parties, but something real and unguarded. Something that came from a place inside her she'd thought was dead. What? Nathaniel asked, noticing. Nothing. This is nice. Nice? Yes. Nice. Is that allowed? For you? Always. They stopped in front of a massive painting, a coronation scene, all pageantry and gold, nobles bowing before a king who looked more tired than triumphant. Can I ask you something? Clara said. Of course. What happens after today? After this, whatever this is? Nathaniel's expression grew serious. That depends on you. On me? On what you want. If you want to go back to your life, to disappear again, I won't stop you. But if you want to keep fighting, to claim the space you deserve— He paused. Then I'll stand with you, however you need me to. And what do you get out of it? What do you mean? You're a duke. You could have anyone. Do anything. Why waste your time on me? Why risk your reputation on someone like— Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't finish that sentence. Clara stopped, startled. You're not a waste of time, Clara. His voice was firm, almost fierce. You're brilliant and brave and so much stronger than you think. And He stopped himself. You what? He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something like vulnerability in his eyes. I admire you, he said quietly, and I want to see what happens when you stop holding yourself back. When you stop making yourself small for people who don't deserve your consideration. The words settled between them, heavy and electric. Clara's heart pounded. This was dangerous. This was reckless. This was everything she'd been taught to avoid, and she didn't care. What if I fail? She whispered. Then you fail. But at least you'll have tried. And what if people say terrible things? What if they destroy me? Then I'll help you rebuild. He stepped closer. Clara, you've spent your whole life afraid of being seen. Maybe it's time to find out what happens when you're not. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the trap, the inevitable betrayal. She found none of it. Okay, she said. Okay? I'll keep fighting. I'll stop disappearing. Nathaniel's expression blazed with something Clara couldn't name, relief, hope, something more. Then we start now, he said. Start what? Making you impossible to ignore. They left the museum an hour later, Clara's head spinning with plans and possibilities. Nathaniel wanted to introduce her to his circle, politicians, artists, intellectuals, people who valued substance over status. It won't be easy, he warned, as the carriage rolled through the city streets, past shops and townhouses, and people going about their ordinary lives. Society will push back. They'll say terrible things. I know. They'll question your motives, your character, your worth. They'll call you a social climber, an opportunist, worse. I know. And your family will hate me. They already do. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. I won't let them hurt you. You can't protect me from everything. I can try. The carriage turned onto Clara Street. She could see the Whitmore house in the distance, cold and imposing, its windows like eyes watching. I don't want to go back, she said suddenly. Nathaniel looked at her. Then don't. What? Come stay at Ravencrest Manor. I have an entire wing that's unused. Mrs. Hendricks can chaperone. You'll be safe. Clara's breath caught. That would cause a scandal. Not if we do it properly, with chaperones, with your father's permission. He'll never give it. Then we'll find another way. His gaze was intense. But I'm not leaving you in a house where you're unsafe. I'm not unsafe, just unwanted. That's the same thing. The carriage slowed. Through the windows, Clara could see movement in the Whitmore house. Shadows behind curtains, shapes in doorways. They're waiting for me, she said. I'll come with you. No, I need to do this myself. I need to... She swallowed hard. I need to know I can stand on my own. Nathaniel studied her, then nodded slowly. All right. But if anything happens, anything at all, you send for me, immediately. Promise me. I promise. She stepped out of the carriage, Mrs. Hendricks helping her down. The front door opened before she reached it, as if it had been waiting. Vivian stood in the entrance, her face a mask of cold fury, her dress immaculate, her posture rigid. Inside, now! Clara glanced back at Nathaniel. He gave her a small nod, his expression steady, grounding. She walked into the house. The door slammed shut behind her with the finality of a prison gate. Vivian was on her in seconds, her voice sharp as glass. How dare you? How dare you parade yourself around the city with that man? His name is Nathaniel. I don't care what his name is. You've made us a laughing stock. Do you know what people are saying? That you've seduced a duke, that you're a social climber, a fortune hunter, that you're using your body to... I haven't seduced anyone. We went to a museum with a chaperone. Then what do you call today? What do you call the way he looks at you? I call it respect, something you wouldn't recognize. Vivian's hand shot out, gripping Clara's arm hard enough to bruise, her nails digging into flesh. You listen to me. This ends now. You will not see him again. You will not accept any more invitations. You will stay in this house and behave like a proper young woman, or so help me. Clara pulled her arm free, stumbling back. No. What did you say? I said no. Clara's voice was steady, even as her heart raced. I'm not a child, Vivian. You can't control me anymore. I can throw you out. Then do it. The words hung in the air, shocking them both. Vivian's eyes narrowed, calculating. You think he'll take you in? You think he cares about you? I think he sees me, which is more than you've ever done. He sees a naive girl he can manipulate, and when he's bored, when he's had his fun, he'll discard you like yesterday's news. And then where will you be? No home, no family, no prospects, ruined. Maybe, but that's my risk to take. How noble. Vivian's voice dripped with venom. How brave. You're willing to throw away everything for a man you barely know. I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for myself. Rosalind appeared in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Mother, people are watching. Clara glanced toward the window. Across the street, neighbors stood in doorways, curtains twitched, faces pressed against glass. The spectacle was already public. The damage already done. Vivian stepped back, composing herself with visible effort, smoothing her dress, lifting her chin. Fine. If you want to destroy your reputation, that's your choice. But you will not destroy Rosalind's future in the process. I'm not trying to destroy anything. Then stay away from the Duke. Let him court Rosalind as he should have from the beginning, as any sensible man would. Clara laughed, the sound bitter and broken. He doesn't want Rosalind. Of course he does. Every man wants Rosalind. Not Nathaniel. You arrogant little... Vivian's control snapped like a thread pulled too tight. You think you're special? You think you're better than us? Better than her? She gestured at Rosalind, who flinched. No. I just think I deserve more than this, more than being told I should be grateful for scraps. You deserve nothing. Vivian's voice dropped to a vicious whisper, each word a calculated blow. Your mother was nobody, a vicar's daughter who got lucky. Your father is a coward who couldn't even mourn properly before replacing her. And you are a burden we took in out of charity. You have no money, no name, no prospects worth mentioning. The Duke is amusing himself with you, but it won't last. Men like him don't marry women like you. They use them. And when he's done, you'll have nowhere to go." The words hit like blows, each one aimed to wound, to break, to send her running back to safety. But Clara didn't flinch. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't have money or name or prospects, but I have something you don't." "And what's that?" "I have someone who sees me as more than a pawn, more than a convenience, more than something to use and discard." Clara's voice grew stronger. "And that's worth more than everything you've ever given me." She turned and walked toward the stairs, her legs shaking but her steps steady. "Where are you going?" Vivian demanded. "To pack." "Pack? You're leaving?" "Yes." "And where exactly do you think you'll go? What respectable establishment will take an unmarried woman with no references, no money?" "I'll figure it out." "You'll end up on the street, or worse." Clara paused on the landing, looking down at Vivian's furious face, at Rosalind's shocked expression, at the life she'd spent 26 years trying to fit into. "Then I'll end up on the street. But at least I'll be free." "This is madness," Vivian hissed. "No, staying here was madness. This is survival." She didn't wait for a response. She went to her room, pulled her trunk from beneath the bed, the same trunk she'd arrived with 16 years ago, and started filling it with everything she owned. Dresses, books, her mother's letters tucked into a faded ribbon, a shawl, a hairbrush. The sum total of 26 years. She worked quickly, her hands shaking but steady, folding and packing with mechanical efficiency. She was halfway through when the door burst open. Rosalind stood there, her face flushed with anger and something else. Fear, maybe. Or jealousy. "You can't do this," she hissed. Clara didn't look up. "I can. I am. He's mine. He was supposed to be mine." "He was never yours, Rosalind. He never even looked at you." "I'm prettier than you. I'm more charming. I'm everything you're not." "Yes, you are." Clara folded a shawl, placed it in the trunk with careful precision. "You're beautiful and polished and perfect. But he doesn't want you. Accept it. He will. Once you're gone, once you've ruined yourself, he'll see that I'm the better choice. The right choice." "Maybe." Clara met her stepsister's eyes. "But I don't think you believe that. I think you're terrified that even without me, he still won't choose you because this isn't about me at all. It's about the fact that for once, being beautiful isn't enough." Rosalind's eyes blazed. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe, but I'll regret staying more. If you leave, you can never come back. Mother will make sure of it. She'll tell everyone you're a fallen woman. She'll destroy you." Clara closed the trunk and locked it with a click that sounded like finality. "Good. Let her try. At least I'll be free to fight back." She looked at Rosalind, this woman who had everything Clara had ever wanted and still felt entitled to more, and felt nothing but pity. "I hope you find someone who makes you happy," Clara said. "I really do. Someone who sees past the pretty face to whatever's underneath, but it won't be Nathaniel, and deep down, you know that." She picked up the trunk, heavier than she expected, and started for the door. Rosalind blocked her path, her face twisted with emotions Clara couldn't name. "If you walk out that door, you're dead to this family." Clara met her gaze evenly. "I've been dead to this family for years, Rosalind. At least now I'm admitting it. At least now I'm choosing to leave instead of waiting to be thrown out." She pushed past, struggling with the weight of the trunk, her muscles straining. She made it to the stairs. Down the hall, past her father's study where he sat in silence, not looking up, his shoulders hunched in defeat or shame or relief. She couldn't tell which. She reached the front door. Vivian appeared, her face white with rage, blocking the way. "If you leave with him, if you destroy your reputation like this, I will make sure no one in society ever speaks to you again. You'll be ruined, completely and utterly ruined." Clara set down the trunk and opened the door. Outside, Nathaniel's carriage still waited. He stood beside it, his expression tense but determined, his hands clasped behind his back like he was holding himself in place by force of will. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. "Clara!" "I'm leaving," she said, her voice carrying across the distance. "I'm leaving all of it. Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He smiled, fierce and proud, and something else that made her chest ache. "Then let's go." The footman moved to take her trunk. Nathaniel helped her into the carriage, his hand warm and steady on hers. Behind her, Vivian's voice rang out sharp and final. "You'll regret this, Clara Whitmore. Mark my words. You'll come crawling back within a week, And when you do, you'll find the door locked. Clara looked back one last time at the house that had never been a home, at the woman who had never been a mother, at the life she was leaving behind. No, she said quietly but with absolute certainty. I won't. The carriage door closed, and as they rolled away into the fading afternoon light, Clara felt the weight of 26 years lifting from her shoulders, leaving her simultaneously lighter and more terrified than she'd ever been. She'd done it. She'd chosen herself. She'd burned every bridge. She'd walked away from the only life she'd ever known, and there was no going back. Where are we going? She asked, her voice small. Nathaniel looked at her, his gray eyes steady and sure. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can breathe. Somewhere you can figure out what comes next. And if I can't, if I've made a terrible mistake, then we'll face it together. Clara nodded, her throat too tight for words. Outside the window, the city passed by, familiar streets giving way to unfamiliar ones, the known world dissolving into the unknown. And for the first time in her life, Clara Whitmore had no idea what came next. But she was ready to find out. Ravencrest Manor rose from the countryside like something out of a fever dream, all stone and shadow and impossible grandeur. Clara pressed her face to the carriage window as they rolled up the long drive, her breath fogging the glass. She'd expected something impressive. She hadn't expected this. The house sprawled across the landscape, 3 stories of weathered gray stone with wings extending in both directions. Ivy climbed the walls in thick tangles. Windows glowed with warm light against the gathering dusk. Gardens stretched into the distance, wild and overgrown but beautiful in their chaos. It's too much, she whispered. Nathaniel, sitting across from her, smiled slightly. My great-grandfather built it to prove he could. Spent a fortune he didn't have. Nearly bankrupted the family. That's comforting. I'm told he was an insufferable man, so there's a certain justice in it. He leaned forward. Clara, are you all right? She pulled back from the window, facing him. I don't know what I am. That's fair. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door and Nathaniel stepped out first, then offered his hand. Clara took it, her legs unsteady as she descended. The front entrance was a massive oak door flanked by stone columns. It opened before they reached it, revealing a tall woman in her 50s with iron-gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Your Grace, she said, curtsying. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Plans changed, Mrs. Winters. This is Miss Clara Whitmore. She'll be staying in the East Wing, indefinitely. Mrs. Winters' sharp eyes took Clara in, rumpled dress, hastily packed trunk, the wild look of someone who just burned their life down. Of course, Your Grace. Shall I prepare the rose room? Yes, and have cook send up dinner, something simple. Very good, sir. Mrs. Winters gestured to a younger maid. Mary, show Miss Whitmore to her room. I'll have water brought up for washing. Clara followed the maid through hallways that seemed to go on forever, past portraits of stern-faced ancestors and rooms filled with furniture draped in white cloth. The house felt enormous and empty, like a museum after hours. The rose room was at the end of the east wing, a large chamber with pale pink walls and a 4-poster bed that could have slept 5 people. Windows overlooked the gardens. A fireplace crackled with fresh-laid wood. Will there be anything else, miss? Mary asked. Clara stared at the room, at the luxury of it, the sheer space, and felt something close to panic. No, thank you. The door closed softly. She was alone. Clara sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. What had she done? She'd left everything. Everyone. For what? For a man she barely knew? For some vague promise of being seen? You're an idiot, she thought. A complete fool. A knock interrupted her spiral. Come in, she called, expecting Mary. It was Nathaniel. He'd removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. He looked younger, less formal, almost uncertain. May I? He asked. She nodded. He crossed the room and sat in the chair by the window, keeping a careful distance. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. You're lying. Clara let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. Yes. Do you want to talk about it? I don't know what to say. I left my home, my family, everything I've ever known, for, she gestured helplessly, for this, whatever this is, survival. Is it? Because right now it feels like the stupidest thing I've ever done. Nathaniel was quiet for a moment. Then, when I was 20, I made a decision that everyone told me was insane. I refused an arranged marriage to the daughter of a powerful earl. It would have secured political alliances, strengthened our position. But I didn't love her, didn't even like her, so I said no. What happened? I was ostracized for 2 years, couldn't get anyone to support my proposals in Parliament, lost friendships. My advisors called me selfish and short-sighted. He smiled, bitter. They were probably right. Then why did you do it? Because I looked at her and saw my future, a life of polite dinners and separate bedrooms and pretending to be happy. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't trade my entire existence for political convenience. He met her eyes. You did the same thing tonight. You chose yourself over safety. That's not stupid, Clara. That's brave. Or desperate. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She laughed despite herself. What happens now? Now you rest. Tomorrow we start making plans. Plans for what? For making you visible, for showing society that you're not someone to overlook or dismiss. He stood. But tonight you sleep, you eat, you let yourself breathe. Nathaniel, he paused at the door. Thank you, she said, for all of this, for seeing me. His expression softened. You're worth seeing, Clara. Don't ever forget that. He left, and Clara was alone again. But this time, the solitude felt less like drowning and more like floating. She changed into a nightgown Mary had provided, ate the dinner brought up on a tray, roasted chicken, vegetables, bread that was still warm, and climbed into the enormous bed. Sleep came easier than she expected, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't dream of disappearing. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through windows Clara had forgotten to close. She woke disoriented, reaching for familiar walls that weren't there, then remembered. I left. I actually left. A knock at the door. Mary entered with tea and toast. Good morning, miss. His Grace asks if you'll join him for breakfast in the morning room at 9. Clara glanced at the clock. 8:30. Yes, thank you. She dressed quickly in a simple blue day dress, did her hair, tried to calm the anxiety churning in her stomach. When she made her way downstairs, getting lost twice, she found Nathaniel in a sun-filled room overlooking the gardens. He stood when she entered. Good morning. Did you sleep? Better than I expected. Good. He gestured to the table, laden with more food than 2 people could possibly eat. Mrs. Winters believes in excess. I've learned to accept it. They sat. Clara took tea, nibbled at toast, tried not to feel overwhelmed by the sheer normalcy of it all. I've been thinking, Nathaniel said, about how to approach this. This? Your introduction to society, to my world. Clara set down her cup. I thought I was already introduced. I've been to parties, dinners. As an afterthought, as someone filling a seat. His voice was firm. That's not what I mean. I mean introducing you as someone who matters, someone with value beyond convenience. And how exactly do we do that? We start with my circle. People who think for themselves, who value intelligence and character over pedigree. He pulled out a piece of paper already filled with names. Lady Thornberry, she runs a literary salon. Lord Ashford, he's funding education reform. Dr. Elizabeth Carr, she's a physician, one of the few women practicing in London. These are people who will see you, Clara, really see you. She stared at the list, overwhelmed. They'll think I'm a social climber. Some will. Others won't care, and the ones who matter will judge you on merit. Merit I don't have. Stop. His voice was sharp enough to make her look up. You're educated, you're thoughtful, you have opinions on politics, literature, art. I heard them yesterday at the museum. Stop pretending you're empty just because someone told you you were. Clara swallowed hard. What if I embarrass you? You won't. You don't know that. I do. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers but not touching. But if you're not ready, we wait. This is your timeline, not mine. She looked at his hand, at the choice he was offering. She could retreat, hide, wait, or she could fight. When? She asked. When what? When do we start? Nathaniel's face broke into a smile that transformed him from severe to almost boyish. Tonight. Lady Thornberry's salon, it's small, informal, a perfect place to begin. Tonight? Clara's voice climbed. I don't have anything to wear. I don't know what to say. You'll be fine, and I'll be right there. What if I freeze? What if I say something stupid? Then you say something stupid. Everyone does eventually. It's called being human. She wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but looking at his face, at the confidence he had in her that she couldn't find in herself, she nodded. Okay, tonight, he confirmed. Well, the rest of the day passed in a blur. Mrs. Winters produced a dress from somewhere, deep burgundy silk with black lace, elegant without being ostentatious. A lady's maid named Alice appeared to do Clara's hair, weaving it into an intricate updo that made her look older, more sophisticated. You look beautiful, miss, Alice said, stepping back. Clara stared at her reflection. She didn't recognize herself. This woman was poised, elegant, someone who belonged in drawing rooms and salons. But it's just a costume, she thought. Underneath, you're still you. The thought was simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Nathaniel was waiting in the entrance hall when she descended, dressed in dark evening clothes that made his gray eyes look like silver. He stared at her for a long moment. What? Clara asked, self-conscious. Is it too much? I can change? You look stunning, he said quietly. You look stunning. Heat flooded her cheeks. Thank you. The carriage ride to Lady Thornbury's townhouse was mercifully short. Clara spent it trying to remember how to breathe, how to speak, how to be anything other than the terrified girl she felt like inside. Clara, Nathaniel's voice cut through her panic. Look at me. She did. You belong here, he said, not because of me, not because of your dress or your hair, because you're brilliant and brave, and you've survived things that would have broken other people. Remember that. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The townhouse was elegant but not overwhelming. A 4-story building in the heart of Mayfair, warm light spilling from windows. A butler admitted them, taking their coats. Inside, the salon was already underway. 20 or so people gathered in a large drawing room, talking in clusters. The atmosphere was different from other parties Clara had attended, less rigid, more animated. People actually seemed to be listening to each other. Lady Thornbury swept toward them, a tall woman in her 60s with white hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Nathaniel, you didn't say you were bringing a guest. Forgive me, Catherine. This is Miss Clara Whitmore. Clara, Lady Catherine Thornbury. Catherine studied her with unnerving directness. Whitmore. Any relation to Edmund Whitmore? My father, Clara said, keeping her voice steady. And how does Edmund's daughter end up at my salon? It was a test. Clara could feel it. The wrong answer would end this before it began. Because His Grace thought I might appreciate intelligent conversation, Clara said, and I was willing to risk being proven wrong. Catherine's eyebrows rose. Then she laughed, genuine and delighted. Oh, I like her. Come, my dear. Let me introduce you to some people who won't bore you to tears. The next hour passed in a whirlwind of names and faces. Lord Ashford, who was surprisingly young and passionate about educational reform. Dr. Carr, who asked Clara pointed questions about her reading habits and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. A poet named Marcus Webb, who spoke about his work with the kind of vulnerability Clara had never heard from a man before. They asked her opinions, listened to her answers, challenged her when they disagreed but never dismissed her. It was intoxicating. So, Miss Whitmore, Lord Ashford said during a lull in conversation, what do you think of the proposed factory reforms? The ones limiting child labor hours? The room quieted slightly. Clara felt eyes turn toward her. She could hedge, give a safe, non-committal answer, or she could be honest. I think they don't go far enough, she said. Limiting hours is meaningless if children are still forced to work at all. We should be funding education, creating opportunities that don't require 6-year-olds to risk their lives in textile mills. But the economic impact, someone started, is less important than human lives, Clara interrupted, surprising herself. We're one of the wealthiest nations on Earth. The idea that we can't afford to educate our children while funding wars and building monuments to ourselves is obscene. Silence. Clara's heart hammered. She'd gone too far, said too much. Then Lord Ashford started clapping. Exactly, that's exactly what I've been saying. The economic argument is a smokescreen for greed. Others joined in, some agreeing, others pushing back with counterarguments. But they were engaging with her, treating her words as worthy of consideration. Nathaniel caught her eye from across the room, his expression proud. Later, as the salon wound down, Lady Thornbury pulled Clara aside. You're wasted in drawing rooms, my dear. Have you ever considered writing? Writing? Essays. Opinion pieces. The kind of thing that might appear in periodicals if you had the right connections. Catherine's smile was knowing, which I happen to have. Clara's breath caught. You're serious? Deadly. I publish a quarterly journal. Essays on social reform, women's rights, political philosophy. I could use a fresh voice. Someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked. She paused. Think about it, and if you're interested, call on me next week. She pressed a card into Clara's hand and swept away. Clara stared at it, the embossed letters swimming slightly. The Progressive Review. Catherine Thornberry, editor. Nathaniel appeared at her elbow. What did Catherine want? Clara's voice failed. She tried again. She asked me to write for her journal. And? I don't know. I'm not a writer. You're someone with thoughts worth sharing. That's all writing is. He studied her face. You're terrified. Yes. Good. That means it matters. The carriage ride home was quiet. Clara pressed the card between her fingers, still not quite believing it was real. Did I do all right? She asked finally. Tonight? Nathaniel turned from the window. You were magnificent. I interrupted Lord Ashford. He loved it. I was too forward, too opinionated. Clara. He waited until she looked at him. You were yourself. That's all I asked you to be. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this feeling of being seen, being valued, wasn't just temporary kindness before the inevitable disappointment. But she was trying. The next week unfolded like a dream Clara was afraid to wake from. Nathaniel introduced her to more people, politicians, writers, reformers. Each encounter was terrifying. Each one she survived. She called on Lady Thornberry, who set her to writing a piece on women's education. Clara spent 3 days on it, writing and rewriting until the words felt honest. It's raw, Catherine said after reading it. A bit rough around the edges, but it's good. We'll publish it next month. Next month? Clara's voice squeaked. Unless you prefer to wait? No, thank you. Word spread Clara Whitmore, the woman staying at Ravencrest Manor, the woman who'd left her family, the woman the Duke was championing. The rumors were vicious. Some said she'd seduced Nathaniel. Others said she was a fortune hunter. A few suggested she was mentally unstable. Clara heard the whispers at parties, saw the sneers behind fans. It stung. Sometimes it felt like drowning. But for every sneer, there was someone like Dr. Carr, who asked about her writing. Like Marcus Webb, who invited her to a poetry reading. Like the young woman at a dinner who quietly thanked her for speaking up about education reform because no one had ever said it better. The tide was turning, slowly, painfully, but turning. 2 weeks after leaving the Whitmore house, Clara received a letter. She recognized her father's handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. Clara, I hope this letter finds you well. Vivian tells me I'm a fool for writing to you, but I find I must. I was wrong. About so many things. I let you fade because it was easier than fighting, easier than facing what I'd lost when your mother died. You deserved better. You deserved a father who saw you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too. If you ever wish to speak, I will listen. Your father, Edmund. Clara read it 3 times, tears blurring the words. It wasn't everything. It didn't fix the years of neglect. But it was something. A crack in the wall. A chance. She folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. The real test came 3 weeks later at the Ashford Ball. It was the event of the season. Hundreds of guests, the entire aristocracy on display. Nathaniel had been invited to give a speech on education reform. Clara was his guest. You don't have to come, he said the night before. It's going to be brutal. Vivian and Rosalind will be there. Clara lifted her chin. Then I'm coming. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, the scent of expensive perfume and ambition. Clara wore the burgundy dress again. Alice had worked miracles with her hair. But she felt exposed, vulnerable. Nathaniel's hand settled on her lower back, grounding. Breathe. She did. They entered together. Heads turned. Whispers started like wildfire. Clara saw Vivian across the room, her face twisting with rage. Rosalind beside her, beautiful and cold. Ignore them, Nathaniel murmured. But before Clara could respond, someone else approached, Lady Pembroke, the woman whose dinner had started everything. Clara braced for the cut, the dismissal. Instead, Patricia smiled. Miss Whitmore, how lovely to see you again. I read your essay in the Progressive Review, quite thought-provoking. Clara blinked. You did? Oh, yes. Catherine sent me a copy. You make excellent points about access to education. She leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, I've been thinking about funding a school for girls. I'd love to discuss it with you. Perhaps tea next week? Yes, of course. Patricia swept away, leaving Clara stunned. Did that just happen? She whispered. Nathaniel's smile was wide. Yes. More people approached throughout the night, some hostile, but others curious, interested, engaging. Clara held her own in debates about labor laws, women's suffrage, parliamentary reform. When Nathaniel gave his speech, he thanked her publicly. Miss Whitmore has taught me that the most important voices are often the ones we're not listening to. We ignore the overlooked at our peril. The applause was polite but genuine. Afterward, as they stood at the edge of the dance floor, Vivian appeared. Her face was a mask of fury barely contained. You think you've won? Clara met her gaze steadily. I'm not playing a game. You've made yourself notorious, a spectacle. No respectable family will touch you. And yet Lady Pembroke just invited me to tea. Lord Ashford wants me to speak at his reform committee. Dr. Carr asked me to collaborate on a research project. Clara's voice was calm. I don't need respect from people like you anymore, Vivian. I've found it elsewhere. He'll tire of you, and when he does, then I'll survive, like I've always done. But this time, on my terms. Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. She turned and left, Rosalind trailing behind like a shadow. Clara exhaled shakily. You handled that well, Nathaniel said. I'm terrified. I know, but you did it anyway. He offered his hand. Dance with me? I'm not very good. Neither am I. They moved on to the floor, joining the other couples. Clara stumbled twice, but Nathaniel steadied her, his hand warm and sure at her waist. People are staring, she murmured. Let them. Aren't you worried about what they'll say? No. He looked down at her, his eyes soft. I stopped caring what they thought the moment I met you. Clara's heart kicked hard. Nathaniel, you changed everything, Clara. You showed me what bravery actually looks like, what it means to fight for yourself when no one else will. His voice dropped. You're remarkable, and May I cut in? They both turned. Edmund Whitmore stood there, looking older than Clara remembered, his face etched with exhaustion and something that might have been hope. Nathaniel looked at Clara. She nodded. He stepped back. Edmund took his place, his movements stiff and uncertain. They danced in silence for a moment. You came, Clara said finally. I had to see, to know you were all right. I'm more than all right. I can see that. He smiled, sad and genuine. Your mother would be so proud of you. Clara's throat tightened. Would she? She spent her whole life trying to be enough for people who would never value her. You stopped trying. You chose yourself. His voice broke slightly. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. I'm scared, Father. Every day. I know, but you're doing it anyway. That's what makes it brave. The music ended. Edmund stepped back, bowing slightly. I won't take any more of your time, but Clara, if you ever need anything at all, I'm here. He left before she could respond. Clara stood there, tears threatening, until Nathaniel reappeared. All right? He asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The rest of the night passed in a blur of conversations and dances and small victories. By the time they left, Clara's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling. In the carriage, she finally let herself relax, sinking into the seat. You did it, Nathaniel said. You showed them. Showed them what? That you're impossible to ignore. Clara laughed, exhausted and exhilarated. I still don't understand why you're helping me. Because you're worth helping. Because you deserve to be seen. He paused. And because somewhere along the way, I stopped being able to imagine my life without you in it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara's breath caught. What are you saying? I'm saying that this started as me wanting to help someone who'd been wronged, but it's become so much more than that. His gaze held hers. I'm saying that I care about you, Clara, deeply. And I want to know if—" She kissed him. It was impulsive and terrifying and perfect. His lips were warm, his hand came up to cup her face, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to just this. When they broke apart, both breathless, Nathaniel smiled. "I'll take that as a yes," he said. Clara laughed, giddy and free. "Yes." Outside the carriage windows, the city passed by, no longer a place where she was invisible, but one where she was finally, impossibly, seen. The kiss changed everything and nothing. Clara woke the next morning in her room at Ravencrest Manor with sunlight streaming through the windows and the memory of Nathaniel's lips on hers still burning. She touched her mouth, half convinced she'd dreamed it, but the way her heart raced told her it was real. A knock at the door. Mary entered with tea and a small envelope on the tray. "Morning, miss. This came for you." Clara opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a note in Nathaniel's handwriting. "Breakfast in the conservatory. If you're not too mortified by last night's carriage incident. N." She laughed despite herself, pressed the note to her chest, and dressed quickly. The conservatory was a glass-walled room at the back of the manor, filled with plants and warm morning light. Nathaniel stood among the greenery, still in shirt sleeves, his hair slightly disheveled. He turned when she entered, and his face transformed. "Good morning." "Good morning." Claire's cheeks burned. "About last night? Don't." He crossed to her, stopping just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Don't apologize. Don't take it back. Unless you regret it?" "No, I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I." He smiled, soft and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "But I'd like to figure it out with you, if you'll have me." Clara's breath caught. "Are you asking—" "I'm asking if you'll let me court you, properly, with intentions that are entirely honorable and completely terrifying." "Nathaniel, I know the timing is strange. I know people will say terrible things, that I'm taking advantage, that you're a fortune hunter, that we're both insane." His voice grew firm. "But I don't care. I want you, Clara, not as a project or a cause, as a partner, as someone I can't imagine my life without." She stared at him, this impossible man who'd seen her when no one else had, who'd given her the courage to see herself. "Yes," she whispered. His smile could have lit the entire room. "Yes? Yes, I'll let you court me. I'll let you—" Her voice broke. "I'll let you love me. If that's what this is." "It is." He took her hands, his grip warm and steady. "It absolutely is." They stood there among the plants and morning light, holding hands like teenagers, grinning at each other like fools. "So what happens now?" Claire asked. "Now we tell the world." Nathaniel's expression turned serious. "And the world is going to lose its mind." He wasn't wrong. The announcement came 2 days later in the Times. His Grace, the Duke of Ravencrest, is pleased to announce his courtship of Miss Clara Whitmore, daughter of Edmund Whitmore, Esquire. The scandal was immediate and spectacular. Letters poured into Ravencrest Manor, some congratulatory, most vicious. How dare he sully the Ravencrest name with a nobody? She's clearly trapped him with feminine wiles. This is what happens when men think with their— Clara stopped reading after the first dozen. They all said variations of the same thing. She wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy, wasn't anything but an opportunist who'd seduced a duke. "Ignore them," Nathaniel said when he found her in the library, surrounded by discarded letters. "They're noise, nothing more." "It's a lot of noise." "Yes, but it's also temporary. Give them something else to talk about, and they'll move on." "Like what?" His smile was calculating. "Like a woman who's not just a duke's girlfriend, but a voice in her own right." Lady Thornbury published Clara's essay on women's education the following week. It was sharp, uncompromising, and it named names. Politicians who'd voted against funding, aristocrats who preached virtue while denying their daughters basic learning. The response was explosive. Half of society was outraged, the other half was electrified. Clara received invitations to speak at reform meetings, women's groups, literary societies. Dr. Carr asked her to co-author a paper on healthcare access. Marcus Webb dedicated a poem to her, to the woman who refused to disappear. But the backlash was brutal. She was disinvited from several society events. Women she'd met at parties suddenly couldn't remember her name. And Vivian launched a campaign to destroy her reputation entirely, spreading rumors that Clara had abandoned her family. that she was living in sin at Ravencrest, that she was mentally unstable. She's telling everyone you had a breakdown, Nathaniel reported one evening, his jaw tight with anger, that I'm exploiting your fragile mental state. Clara set down her teacup with deliberate calm. Is she? Clara, no, it's actually perfect. She stood, pacing. She's so threatened by me that she has to paint me as insane, as someone who can't possibly be making rational choices, because the alternative, that I chose myself, that I walked away from her poison, is too terrifying for her to accept. You're not angry? Oh, I'm furious, but I'm also done caring what Vivian thinks. Clara turned to face him. I want to confront her, publicly. I want to show everyone exactly who she is. Nathaniel's eyes gleamed. What did you have in mind? The opportunity came 2 weeks later at the Harrington Charity Gala, a massive event raising funds for orphanages and schools. Everyone who mattered would be there, including Vivian and Rosalind. Clara wore a gown Nathaniel had commissioned, deep sapphire silk that made her eyes look like the ocean, with a neckline just daring enough to make a statement. Her hair was swept up, her mother's locket gleaming at her throat. You look like a queen, Nathaniel said when she descended the stairs. I feel like I'm going to be sick. That's how you know it matters. He offered his arm. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The Harrington ballroom was packed with London's elite, all glittering gowns and sharp eyes. Clara felt them watching as she entered on Nathaniel's arm, assessing, judging, whispering. She lifted her chin and smiled. They worked the room together, Nathaniel introducing her to politicians and reformers. Clara held her own in conversations about policy and philosophy, no longer the silent girl who'd once filled seats at dinner tables. Then she saw Vivian. Her stepmother stood near the refreshment table, holding court with a group of society matrons. Rosalind beside her, beautiful and bored. Vivian's eyes locked on Clara. Her expression went cold. Clara excused herself from her conversation and walked directly toward them. Nathaniel followed, a silent presence at her back. Vivian, Clara said pleasantly. Rosalind, how lovely to see you. The matrons went silent. This was the confrontation they'd all been waiting for. Vivian's smile was poisonous. Clara, or should I call you Miss Whitmore now, since you've apparently forgotten your family? I haven't forgotten anything, including every cruel word, every dismissal, every time you made me feel like I was less than nothing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People were gathering now, sensing blood. I gave you a home, Vivian hissed, fed you, clothed you. You gave me a prison, and you made sure I knew every day that I was there on sufferance, that I should be grateful for scraps. You ungrateful? No. Claire's voice rang out, clear and strong. I'm not ungrateful. I'm done. Done pretending that your cruelty was kindness. Done accepting that I should shrink to make you comfortable. Done being invisible. You're making a scene, Vivian said, her voice shaking with rage. Good, because I want everyone here to know exactly who you are. Clara turned to address the growing crowd. This woman spent years convincing me I was worthless, that I should be thankful for a roof over my head while she gave her daughter everything and me nothing. She took my father's guilt over my mother's death and weaponized it, and when I finally found the courage to leave, she tried to destroy my reputation rather than face what she'd done. That's a lie, Vivian snapped. You left because you wanted to trap a duke. You saw an opportunity. I left because staying was killing me. Clara's voice broke slightly, but she didn't stop. I left because I realized that survival isn't the same as living, and I chose to live. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Then a voice from the crowd. Good for you. Clara turned. Lady Pembroke stepped forward, her expression fierce. I've known Vivian Whitmore for 20 years, Patricia said loudly, and I've watched her belittle every woman who threatened her fragile sense of superiority. It's about time someone stood up to her. Another voice. Dr. Carr. Miss Whitmore has more courage in her smallest finger than most people have in their entire body. She's brilliant and kind and everything this society claims to value but actively punishes. More voices joined in. Lord Ashford. Marcus Webb. People Clara had met through Nathaniel. People who'd seen her for who she was. Vivian's face went white, then red. You'll regret this, she said to Clara, her voice low and venomous. No, Clara said quietly. I won't. Because I'm finally free of you. She turned and walked away. Nathaniel beside her, leaving Vivian standing alone in a crowd that was no longer sympathetic. Outside in the garden, Clara finally let herself shake. That was, Nathaniel started. Terrifying. I was going to say magnificent. He pulled her close, his arms warm around her. You were magnificent. I might have just destroyed what's left of my reputation. Or you might have just proven that you don't need their approval to matter. Clara buried her face in his shoulder, breathing him in. What happens now? Now we keep going, keep fighting, keep living. Together? If you'll have me. She pulled back to look at him, this man who'd given her the courage to see herself. Always. He kissed her then, soft and sure and full of promise. When they broke apart, Clara saw her father standing at the edge of the garden. Edmund approached slowly, his expression unreadable. That was quite a scene. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, Clara said, though she wasn't. Not really. Embarrassed me? Edmund's voice cracked. Clara, you were extraordinary. I've never been more proud. Tears stung her eyes. Truly? Truly. He looked at Nathaniel. Your Grace, might I have a word with my daughter? Alone? Nathaniel glanced at Clara. She nodded. When they were alone, Edmund pulled an envelope from his jacket. I've been carrying this for weeks, trying to find the courage to give it to you. Clara opened it. Inside were legal documents and a bank draft for a substantial sum. What is this? Your mother's inheritance from her father. He left it in trust for you to be given on your 25th birthday. Edmund's voice was heavy with shame. I should have given it to you then, but Vivian convinced me to hold it back, said you weren't responsible enough, said we should manage it for you. Clara stared at the numbers, her vision blurring. This is enough to live independently, to never need anyone's charity again. He met her eyes. It's yours. It always was. I'm sorry it took me so long to do the right thing. Father, I failed you, Clara. For years. I let Vivian poison our home because I was too weak to stop her, too afraid of being alone again. Tears streamed down his face. But watching you tonight, seeing you stand up for yourself, I realized something. You're stronger than I ever was, braver. And you deserve so much more than I gave you. Clara's throat closed. I forgive you. You shouldn't. Maybe not, but I do. She touched his hand. Because I'm tired of carrying anger. And because I want to move forward, not stay stuck in the past. Edmund pulled her into a hug, the first real embrace she could remember since childhood. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered. So very proud. When they parted, Clara felt lighter. Not healed, that would take time, but beginning to heal. 3 months later, Clara stood in Lady Thornberry's drawing room, surrounded by women who'd become friends. Dr. Carr was there, along with several writers, activists, and reformers. All right, Catherine said, calling the meeting to order. We have funding for the school, thanks to Lady Pembroke's generous donation and Clara's tireless advocacy. Applause filled the room. The school, a proper institution for girls from all backgrounds, had been Clara's project for the past 2 months. She'd written proposals, courted donors, fought bureaucrats, and somehow, impossibly, it was happening. We break ground next month, Clara said, still not quite believing it, and we'll have our first students by autumn. What will you call it? Someone asked. Clara touched her mother's locket. The Whitmore Academy. After my mother, who never got the education she deserved but made sure I understood its value. More applause. More tears. After the meeting, Nathaniel found her in the garden, staring at the plans for the school building. Penny for your thoughts? He asked. Just thinking about how different everything is now. 3 months ago, I was invisible. Now I'm building a school. You were never invisible, Clara, just unseen. There's a difference. She turned to face him. I never thanked you properly for everything. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave me the courage to see myself, to fight for myself. I don't know if I would have survived without you. Nathaniel took her hands. You would have. Maybe not the same way, maybe not as quickly, but you would have survived, because that's who you are, a survivor who refused to stay broken. I'm still scared sometimes, that I'll wake up and this will all be gone, that I'll be back in that house, disappearing again. Then I'll remind you every day that you're real, that you matter, that you're... He paused, took a breath. Clara Whitmore, I love you. I'm in love with you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it. Her heart stopped. What are you saying? He knelt, pulling a small box from his pocket. I'm saying marry me. Not because society expects it or because it's convenient, but because I can't imagine my life without you. Because you make me braver and better and more myself than I've ever been. Clara stared at the ring, simple, elegant, perfect, and felt tears streaming down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like promise and forever. When they broke apart, both laughing and crying, Clara looked at this man who'd seen her when she couldn't see herself. I love you too, she said. So much it terrifies me. Good. We can be terrified together. The wedding took place 6 months later in the chapel at Ravencrest Manor. It was small, just close friends and family who actually mattered. Lady Thornbury, Dr. Carr, Lord Ashford, Marcus Webb, who read a poem that made everyone cry. Edmund walked Clara down the aisle, his hand trembling in hers. I don't deserve this, he whispered as they reached Nathaniel. To be part of your happiness. Clara squeezed his hand. Yes, you do, because you chose to change, and that matters. Nathaniel took her hand, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The ceremony was simple, traditional vows with one addition, a promise they'd written together. I promise to see you, Clara said, her voice steady. Every day. In all the ways you are. Not who you should be or could be, but who you are. And to love all of it. I promise to stand beside you, Nathaniel said. Not in front, not behind. Beside. As your partner. Your equal. Your home. When they kissed, the small crowd erupted in cheers. At the reception, Clara found herself pulled aside by Rosalind. Her stepsister looked different. Thinner, tired, less certain. I wanted to say... Rosalind stopped, started again. I'm sorry. For everything, for being cruel, for making you feel small, for... Her voice broke. For being my mother's daughter. Clara studied her, this woman who'd tormented her for years. She could be cruel now, pay back every slight, every sneer. Instead, she said, Thank you, I accept your apology. Just like that? Just like that. Because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you, and I'm done hurting. Rosalind's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to be anything but what she made me. Then learn. It's never too late to choose differently. Clara paused. And if you ever need help, if you ever want to escape, I'm here. Rosalind nodded, speechless, and walked away. Later, as the sun set and lanterns lit the gardens, Clara and Nathaniel stood together watching their guests dance and laugh. Happy? He asked. Terrified. Overwhelmed. Grateful. All of it. She leaned into him. But yes, happy. Good. Because this is only the beginning. Of what? Everything. The school. The advocacy work. The life we're building together. He turned her to face him. You changed my world, Clara, and now we get to change the world together. She kissed him, soft and sure. I like the sound of that. Then, 1 year later, Clara stood at the front of the Whitmore Academy, watching as young girls filed into classrooms. Rich and poor, titled and common, all learning together. It had been a fight every step of the way. Bureaucrats who didn't see the point, donors who wanted control, critics who said educating girls was wasteful, but it was here, real, thriving. A teacher approached, a young woman named Sarah who'd been one of Clara's first hires. The afternoon classes are full, Duchess. We may need to add more sections. Clara still wasn't used to the title, but she smiled. Then we'll add them. Every girl who wants to learn deserves the chance. She walked through the halls, listening to lessons on mathematics and literature and science, girls laughing, learning, growing. In one classroom, she paused at the doorway. The teacher was discussing women's suffrage, and the girls were debating passionately, some for, some against, all engaged. This was what she'd fought for. Not perfection, but possibility. That evening, she returned to Ravencrest Manor to find Nathaniel in his study, working on a speech for Parliament. How was the school? He asked, setting down his papers. Chaotic. Wonderful. Everything I hoped. She sat on his desk, grinning. We're going to need more funding, maybe another building. Already planning expansion? Always. She grew serious. Nathaniel, there are so many girls out there like I was, invisible, told they don't matter. We can't save all of them, but we can save some, and teach them to save themselves. He stood, pulling her close. We'll find the funding. We always do. How did I get so lucky? Clara whispered. Luck had nothing to do with it. You fought. You survived. You chose yourself when no one else would. He kissed her forehead. That's not luck. That's courage. That night, Clara stood at the window of their bedroom, looking out at the grounds of Ravencrest Manor. So much had changed. She'd gone from invisible to impossible to ignore, from surviving to living. But the scars remained. Sometimes she still woke up afraid that it was all a dream, that she'd open her eyes and be back in that small room in the Whitmore house, small and silent and forgotten. Those moments were getting rarer, though. Nathaniel appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? About the girl I was. At that dinner. The one who disappeared and no one noticed. And I'm glad she's gone. But I'm also grateful to her, because she survived long enough to become me. She'd be proud of you. Clara turned in his arms. I'm proud of me. Finally. As you should be. You're extraordinary, Clara Cross. The name still felt strange on her ears, but in the best way. She kissed him, slow and deep, tasting home and safety and love. When they parted, she smiled. I was thinking about something else, too. What's that? About how I spent so long trying to be seen by people who would never value me. And then I met you. And you showed me that being seen isn't about making yourself smaller. It's about finding people who appreciate your actual size. Poetic. I've been reading Marcus's work. It's rubbing off. They laughed together, and the sound filled the room like light. 5 years later, the Whitmore Academy had expanded to 3 locations. Clara's essays appeared regularly in the Progressive Review and other publications. She spoke at rallies, advised politicians, mentored young women who reminded her of herself. She wasn't famous, exactly, but she was known, respected, valued. And some nights, when she tucked her daughter into bed, little Emma, who had Nathaniel's gray eyes and Clara's stubborn chin, she thought about that dinner 5 years ago, about the seat that was taken, about the woman who disappeared, about the choice that changed everything. Mama? Emma asked sleepily. Tell me the story again. Which story, sweetheart? About the invisible lady? Clara smiled, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. Once upon a time, there was a woman who everyone overlooked. They thought she was small and unimportant, but she wasn't. She was just waiting for the right moment to be seen. And then what happened? Then she met someone who saw her, really saw her, and he showed her that she'd always been worth seeing. She just hadn't believed it yet. Is that you, Mama? Yes, darling, that's me. I'm glad you got seen. Clara's throat tightened. So am I, sweetheart. So am I. She kissed Emma's forehead and left the room, finding Nathaniel waiting in the hallway. Still telling that story? He asked. Always. So she knows that being overlooked doesn't mean being worthless. It just means the right people haven't looked yet. They walked together to their bedroom, where windows overlooked grounds that had become home in ways the Whitmore house never had. Do you ever regret it? Nathaniel asked. Leaving? Fighting? All of it? Clara thought about it, really thought about it. About the pain and fear and uncertainty. About the bridges burned and reputations damaged and people who still whispered about the social climber who'd trapped a duke. No, she said finally. Not for a second. Because I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I pretended to be. Good, because I'm rather fond of who you are. Only rather? He pulled her close, his smile warm and real. Devastatingly, impossibly, eternally fond. They stood at the window together, watching the moon rise over the gardens, and Clara thought about all the versions of herself she'd been. The invisible girl, the convenient guest, the woman who vanished, and now, finally, the woman who refused to disappear. It hadn't been easy. Some days it still wasn't, but she'd done it. She'd fought for herself when no one else would. She'd claimed her space in a world that insisted she should have none, and she'd discovered something crucial along the way. Strength wasn't about being perfect or powerful or unafraid. Strength was about refusing to give up, about choosing yourself even when it terrified you, about understanding that survival wasn't enough, that you deserved to thrive. What are you thinking? Nathaniel asked. Clara smiled, leaning into him. I'm thinking about how glad I am that I left that dinner, that that I walked away, that I chose this. This? You, me, us, all of it. She turned to face him. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for being brave enough to fight back. They kissed, soft and familiar, the kind of kiss that spoke of years together and years still to come. And in that moment, in that house, in that life she'd built from nothing but courage and choice, Clara Whitmore Cross finally understood what it meant to be seen. Not as someone filling a space, but as someone defining it. Not as the woman who disappeared, but as the woman who'd refused to stay gone. And that was everything.